All right, Steve. So I'll just remind those that have logged on that if you would please mute your microphones on this on the live stream event where you see your microphones. Our streaming in folks they don't have a microphone, so no concerns there. But you certainly type in any questions you want into the chat room, and if the presentations between either Byron or the soup don't cover your questions, we'll go back through. We get a transcript of the chat messages, and we can look through the messages and try to get an answer back to you. Joe Fagan and I'm Craig Washington, class of '89. Joe Fagan. We're monitoring the chat rooms to capture all those questions, and that's the way we'll proceed. When we get to the Q&A, I will ask those that have a live microphone to raise your hand, please, just so that I can keep that organized as we move forward. So 59, I guess we can probably get going. Byron Marchant, our president and CEO of the Alumni Association, class 78. Ready to go, sir.
Great. Hey, everybody. Great to see you. Hey, Maury, I got a special request for you. When there's an Olympics next year in Tokyo, I'm a big-time track guy. Save me a spot out there for the 2021 Olympics. I'll come out and join your chapter a year from now and hopefully be out there this time to watch the Olympics. I'd love to do that. So let's keep in touch on that. Great to see you on this call, and thanks for leaning in from Tokyo Bay. Appreciate it. And to everyone else, Linda, great to see you again. Actually, since I chatted with your chapter in June, this is now our 4th town hall since that time. So great to be able to connect Steve with you in the region. And Barbette, good to see you. You've been on a couple of these town halls. Thanks for leaning in. Craig, good to see you out there. Hopefully if there's a football season, we'll let you know how that plays. I think we're coming your way virtually for the San Diego SAC. We call it the San Diego SAC because it was supposed to be there physically in August, but we're going to do it virtually. It'll be our 3rd virtual SAC. So Craig, we're coming your way virtually, even though we're not there physically for the San Diego SAC next month. And to Sherry Ann on San Francisco, great to hear that news about all the new energy in San Francisco. Liam Lane and I connected many moons ago, your classmate, back in the day when he was considered to be really a young buck, but now you guys are almost 20 years out of the academy, so now you're part of what they call the infrastructure of the organization. You're not just young bucks anymore, but great to see you guys leaning in. Really happy to hear about all that energy in San Francisco, so I appreciated hearing that and pass my regards on to your chapter president. So with that, I'm going to get started with some remarks. The soup will join us about a minute 45 into this conversation, and happy to take questions during the remarks or after the remarks. The presentation is designed to answer a lot of questions we've been getting by email, text, or otherwise from around the country, either on COVID-19 or on race and equity issues that have been presented to our association since June as a result of a Facebook Live disclosure that's been publicized around the world. So happy to take questions as I go through these remarks. You will be the 4th town hall in about 3 days that we've had, and so it's been a real exciting way to connect with alumni around the country while we're all physically constrained. Next slide, Craig.
I'm just going to call up your presentation now.
So this is the beginning of my, no, go back.
Yep.
It's the beginning of the deck. This is actually a historic picture. This is the graduation commencement ceremony in front of Bancroft Hall. I don't think that's ever been done in the 175-year history of the Naval Academy. Welcome to the pandemic version of commencement and the hat toss, the cover toss. This was one of several shifts of the class of 20 that came back to the Naval Academy to sit 6 feet apart, be there physically, and toss their hats. We'll never forget this time. I don't even think they did this during the Spanish flu. So a lot of new firsts at the Academy in 175 years, but the class of 20 had to deal with a lot since the March time frame with this pandemic, had to graduate virtually, had to finish their semester coursework virtually, and had to come back physically to get their stuff and get commencement. So congratulations to them and the suit for doing it physically and not just through a Google Meets or something else like that. That continues 175 years of tradition of doing it here physically, but they did it in front of Bancroft Hall. So that's a historic picture, one that I hope we don't repeat this time next year. I hope we're back in sync for the sake of our Naval Academy and our country, that we can get back to normal by this time next year. But something we should all remember as part of the sacrifice of what it takes to make things work. And then they've now joined the fleet under these same conditions. So I leave this with all of you as something we'll never forget. I do want to thank Steve and the chapter reps on our Alumni National Board, Todd, Doug Ballard, Alan Lurkbacher, Steve Colon, and Brian DeJarnay, who represent their chapters on our Alumni National Board. Appreciate you leaning in, appreciate all the chapter engagement in the Western region. And Steve, thanks for leading the Western region for as long as you have and keeping everybody engaged west of the Rocky Mountains. Next slide. So I've been using the opportunity to talk to alumni around the country about a couple of things, one of which is that the headlines we're in today, COVID-19, race and bigotry, really don't present knee-jerk headlines that we have to provide knee-jerk responses to. As an alumni association, we've really been looking at the issues of equity and inclusion as part of Plan 2020 as far back as 2011 and 12, after we did an all-alumni survey when I first got here. And the reason I say that is because some people think that a reactive tweet or reactive email or some kind of Facebook post is a form of leadership. I would argue that real leadership is what you do every day, whether the headlines are there or not, that you do things that you need to do in order to maintain your health of your membership in your association, and you do it for good business reason, which is that you want to maintain your relevance in the time that we're in. So I'll be talking today about our efforts under Plan 2020, none of which came about as a result of the headlines that have hit us since June with race and bigotry, or COVID-19 since March. These have all been things we've been doing every year, year in and year out for the past almost 8 or 9 years under a plan that we've both developed metrics for and reported out on annually. So, you know, I say to people when we have these town halls, some of them say to me, hey, you know, what's your reaction to what's going on? My reaction is that you lead every day and every year on issues that you should be doing, whether the headlines are there or not. And then when the headlines hit, you shouldn't be caught flat-footed because you've been trying to do the right thing throughout the time. So we'll talk more about that today. Next slide. These are some alumni I've met from around the world in my role as alumni president over the last 10 years. And I mention this because some of our alumni don't have a frame of reference that I'm privileged to have, which is to really be in a hub-spoke relationship with our alumni around the world and actually get to meet them personally and talk to them about their experiences. And everyone here I've had a chance to meet is humble, very accomplished alumni. They happen to also be diverse in our alumni base, but their first priority is a strong Naval Academy, a strong Navy, a strong Marine Corps, strong national defense, and ultimately strong communities. They also want the Naval Academy and our association to be aspirational, Proud of his legacy before he passed away, and we carry on his legacy as we continue to fight for being equitable and inclusive in our association and our broader Navy and Marine Corps. Wendy Lawrence, talked about her earlier. She's going to lead in yet again. Proud to work with her, first woman distinguished graduate. She's a proud alumni, proud of her dad's legacy here as superintendent. Proud to work with the women and mentor all alumni, frankly, in her role not only at NASA, but as a Naval Academy graduate and a retired Navy captain, and just very actively engaged. Very proud to work with Wendy throughout the generations on a variety of issues. She loves the Academy and is very proud of the long blue line legacy that she represents. David Robinson, everybody calls him the Admiral. He's Lieutenant Robinson back in Annapolis. We strip him of that rank when he comes back to Annapolis, but he's known as the Admiral all around the world. He's an ambassador, global ambassador, extremely humble, accomplished. When I call him and ask him to help with anything Naval Academy, if he can do it, he'll do it. He travels the country to help us do it. He'll show up humbly with his 7'3" frame or anywhere and get out of the car and speak to anyone if we ask him to do it. He's been leaning in for decades. Fortunate to have him as an ambassador, extremely accomplished global ambassador for not only our Navy and Naval Academy, but the broader society and the NBA as well. So very proud that I've gotten a chance to know him in this role. He has a Carver Academy effort for underprivileged kids in San Antonio. He formed that Carver Academy private school effort with his own money. And the Carver Academy principles, if you look it up online, largely come from what he learned at the Naval Academy. He's teaching young people those principles in his effort to give back in the community in San Antonio at the Carver Academy, all based on leadership he learned at the Naval Academy. So proud to know David and call him a friend and an alumni. And Suni Williams, class of '87, she dials in from the space station quite a bit upon request to any alumni that want to listen to her and her story about what she's done in space, what she represents to our academy. She loves the long blue line. Again, she doesn't just shoot emails around. She's actually part of whatever active engagement we want with alumni around the world, whatever asked. So I appreciate the diversity and range of these alumni. I've gotten a chance to know them all in my time here as president. I think many alumni may not know them or know them as well as I do. So I mentioned them as part of the diversity of our great alumni long blue line. Next slide. So the issues of social justice, equity, and inclusion are in the news at the Naval Academy Alumni Association from Facebook since June for sure. Even though we've been working on it well before that. At the Air Force Academy in their alumni magazine, they had to issue an apology. At the Coast Guard Academy, there's an ongoing conversation on race and equity issues at the Coast Guard Academy as we speak. At the Air Force Academy, the superintendent just issued an edict this past week that they're going to study issues of race and bigotry at the Academy and try to address wherever they seem to be showing up, the Air Force Academy, and deal with it systemically. At West Point, there's an article in the New York Times about some recent alumni who wrote an article to West Point about what West Point can do better. West Point's engaged in IG to look at West Point practices and policies to see what they can do better. The bottom line is, this is not just a Naval Academy conversation. It's a Department of Defense conversation. It's a societal conversation. It's not just one generation's conversation against another. It's just something that we have to continue to lead on. These issues are presented everywhere. Not one academy is immune from it. And so I want to make you aware of these headlines because some think that we, the Naval Academy, seem to own them, and that's where it stops. That's simply not true. Next slide. So in the news, in order to make sure people don't think this is just the older generation with attitudes that have never been updated, class of 2024 incoming Plebe was not allowed to come to the academy based on issues of race and bigotry that came up and that the academy became aware of. So I say this because this is not a generational issue where the older generation just gets labeled with, these are the issues you brought along with you and you never resolved. These are issues throughout every generation in our society, and we'll have to lead on them in order to continue to be effective. Being silent won't do it. Trying to ignore it won't do it. And so the conversation at the Naval Academy and our Alumni Association is relevant not just to us as alumni, but to the current brigade of midshipmen and the recent graduates that have just joined the fleet. Next slide. I thank Caleb Cronick, class of 11, for stepping up in Jacksonville. He's class of 11. I just told him the other day he was on the call with the Eastern Region Association yesterday, I believe. And I told him he made our alumni board younger by almost 30 years when he joined the alumni board to replace the prior rep from the Jacksonville chapter who was no longer allowed to be in the chapter. And I say that because as an alumni association, we're trying to get younger on our alumni board. That's a strategic imperative. They're 20 years of millennials, graduated since 2000. Some of them are 20 years out of the academy. That's a full Navy career. They're actually not as young as we 70s and 80s people keep talking about. They're well groomed on how the society works. They should be taking over our chapters. They should be handed the baton. So we're working on that, and I thank Caleb for stepping up and leading the Jacksonville chapter and bringing more youth to it. Youth is relative to those of us from the 70s and 80s, but bringing more energy and youth to it from the 21st century is important to every chapter, and Caleb stepped up in Jacksonville. So I thank them. That's also a message to all of you. No offense to any of you folks who are my era, but we should be figuring out how to hand the baton over to people who are in the 21st century of our graduating groups as a matter of our future health. So more to follow on that. Next slide. It's my classmate Cecil Haney. He has stepped up. He saw what was going on, both in our association with the headlines we've had around the world, as well as in the Navy and in Wells and society. And he decided that he wanted to communicate to alumni about his experience as a 4-star African-American Naval Academy graduate, second African-American 4-star in the history of the U.S. Navy, second African-American 4-star in the history of the Naval Academy. Michelle Howard is the third African-American 4-star in the history of the Naval Academy and the Navy. And he wrote an article for Wave Tops in June, and he's going to have an article in Shipmate coming out. He's leaning forward on our foundation board. I'm happy to have him as a teammate as we go forward, and he decided he did not want to stay on the sidelines while all of these conversations are underway. So he's challenged alumni from his perspective as a 4-star, former head of Strategic Command, former head of TAC Fleet, a hot-running submarine sailor his entire career. And he wanted to lean in and say, hey, we got to do better as alumni, so let's work on it. And I'm very proud to work with Cecil on our foundation board and his communication to alumni. Next slide. Sean Buck and I have been working together since he arrived over a year ago. He's from Indiana. I'm from Chicago. Midwestern blood, I believe in it. I think the Midwest offers a lot of great legacy for the Academy and has done so over the centuries. So I'm happy to work as a teammate with him on these issues. COVID-19 is a huge challenge, but we're teammates on issues of equity and inclusion as well. And I think he's going to make sure the Academy is an example and an aspiration for the country on these issues, and he knows there's more work to do. He'll be on our call a little bit later and join us in about 20 minutes. Next slide. Admiral Gilday, class of 85, also has indicated the Navy has its challenges, and he's readily admits that, and I agree with that. Cecil Haney agrees with that. A lot of people agree with that. So the Navy continues to have an opportunity to do better on these issues of equity and inclusion, and the Department of Defense agrees with that, and Admiral Gilday agrees that they have more work to do. So I'm glad those conversations are underway. I know some of our alumni are actually talking to the Navy directly about these issues at the very senior leadership levels of the Navy, and are actively being asked to provide input on what the Navy can do better than it's been doing, and what it can do better going forward as we head into the 3rd decade of this century. Next slide. I'm happy to work alongside Sam Locklear, our chairman, class of 77. He and Pam could have gone off into the sunset after they left Hawaii as Pacific Commander, but he decided he wanted to give back in a big way as chairman of our Alumni Association. Pretty steely-eyed under pressure. I've worked alongside Sam in a variety of roles. In my current role, since he was Director of Navy Staff under CNO Admiral Roughhead many moons ago. I then went off and was commander over in Europe of the Libya operations, and was also now Pacific Commander, and now he's the head of our Alumni Association. He's very steely-eyed and consistent on issues of equity and inclusion. He's a former Commandant and midshipman. And so he knows the Naval Academy. He loves the Academy, wants to make sure we do better as an association. formed a special committee to look at what we've been doing, take a look at the history of what we've accomplished since Plan 2020, since we're in the last year of that, and what more we could do as we go forward to form a new Plan 2030 as we go forward. So happy to work alongside Sam and work with the special committee and work with the board as we go forward to develop a new Plan 2030 and act on issues that are presented. Next slide. So I'll talk about the history of the Naval Academy for a variety of reasons, but some people have shot me an email, kind of an oh my God moment email. There's a lot of oh my gods that I get from people. And they're like, well, gosh, what are you going to do with COVID-19? How's the Academy going to survive? Wow, you got all these things going on. You know, how's the Academy going to keep going? The Academy's been around through a whole bunch of stuff. 175 years is a long period of time. It's been around since the Civil War, when it had to move the headquarters of the Academy up to Newport, Rhode Island. It's been around since the Spanish flu. When they, read the story in Shipmate, they brought the entire brigade back from the Spanish flu. Some people didn't make it, most did. It's been around since World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, War on Terror, Civil Rights Movement, Vietnam War, protests, pandemics, 9/11. It'll be around another 175 years. The point is, who are the stewards of the Academy and our association when challenges are presented in the times that it's in? And so while we're here, some wringing our hands about what the future looks like, I'm very enthusiastic about the resilience of the Academy and our alumni to lead in times when challenges are presented and do what's necessary to set the aspirational example for the country. And we'll continue to do that here. We celebrate 175 years of the Academy this fall, October of 2020. When you look at how the Academy was founded, after hanging some midshipmen in training, they decided there was a better way to train them than to hang them. So they formed the Academy. And ever since, we've been evolving ever since that time to be more of an aspirational example for the country. So 175 years later, we'll celebrate that birthday this fall. We can be proud of it, and there'll be another 175 years well beyond us that people will talk about our institution. And they should talk about it in an aspirational light. Next slide. This is the history of our Alumni Association. Some people know it, some people don't. Founded in 1886. Initially founded as an association of graduates. We're 134 years old as of this past June. The reason it went from an association of graduates to an alumni association was that in the early 1900s, when the Depression hit, they felt it was unfair that midshipmen had to leave for no other reason than the economics of their families required them to go back home and scratch out a living, that they couldn't be members of our alumni association. So instead of being an association of graduates, which is what West Point and Air Force still do, we're an alumni association because if you were a midshipman here at any time and you're actively left the Academy and you're still honorably considered to be an honorable, service brigade member of the Academy Association with no other issues or crimes on your record, you can be a member of our Alumni Association. And in fact, there are a lot of alumni who are members of our Alumni Association who are not graduates of our Naval Academy. We should be proud of that legacy. It means that we were empathetic in the 1900s to not exclude people. We were sympathetic to people's plight, even if they couldn't graduate. And that empathy is important today as we deal with the issues we're dealing with today. Empathy should be part of what we're all about. It's been that way since 1886, and it's going to be that way for the next 134 years for those of us who steward it. Next slide. Again, I give this slide to many who are from the 70s and 80s may not know the current demographics of the Academy, the Brigade of Midshipmen, but it's certainly different than when I was there. I'm a class of 78 graduate, and women showed up when I was a second classman on the yard. So certainly the demographics are different then than they are today. 73% male, 27% female, 61% white, 39% minority of multiple races. So that's the class of 23. Similar demographics for the entire brigade, 63% white, 37% minority, 73% male, 27% female. This is what's graduating in the fleet. That's why we, when we formed Plan 2020, said, hey, look, if we're going to be relevant to the millennial classes from 2000 to 2020, we better have an alumni association that is inviting to this demographic, that recognizes the level of female to male ratio in a graduating class and what that portends for the future of the Navy and our alumni, that recognizes the white to minority ratio, in each graduating class and what that portends for the future of our sailors and Marines in the fleet and officer corps, and what our alumni association should be ready to be relevant to. If we define our association by the 70s and 80s, we missed the boat on where these demographics have gone, because the demographics from those decades are nowhere close to the demographics of today's Naval Academy, or for that matter, for today's officer corps. So we're determined to make sure we're relevant to that, and we hold ourselves to measure ourselves against these demographics as we evaluate how we're doing as an association in Annapolis every year. Next slide. So Plan 2020, been at it since 2012, came from a 2009-10 survey of all alumni. The alumni said what they wanted from an association then. Strategic committee of the board was formed by Admiral Abbott. That strategic committee, and I was part of it, came up with Plan 2020 and said, hey, where do we want to be in 2020? What kind of association do we want by then from where we were back then? Some of the things that have been done as a result of that were we expanded our electronics and our IT capabilities to be more social media friendly, more mobile friendly, and more IT friendly to chapters. WaveTops came out during this time. WaveTops is now opened by about 33,000 alumni every month out of about 58,000 alumni members. It's a pretty good open rate on a monthly electronic magazine. Social media is up on Facebook. We've been at that since this decade has been underway. That's been more prevalent. Our website's been redesigned several times, continues to be updated with feedback from alumni. We've engaged in small focus group initiatives to update ShipMate. And also, we're now supporting about 16 chapters around the country with IT support for their membership, and also trying to help them plan events, even though we're virtual these days. So that's all a big improvement. That was all with intention every year, every month as part of Plan 2020. We also are building a new alumni center. That came about not from some headline that just happened. We said 10 years ago we needed to be in new facilities that would make our alumni proud and keep moving us forward as a matter of our infrastructure support for our alumni from around the world when they come to Annapolis. So we're in the middle of doing that. We're well underway with that project, and that should be open by 2022. That came from this strategic plan as well as the Naval Academy plan that paralleled this. We were determined to increase board diversity, measured every single year, and how we went about that and how we measured it has been analyzed and assessed every year, reported to the board. And we also knew we had to engage a broader group of alumni beyond classes and chapters. I love all of our chapters around the country. I love what all of you do. If we didn't have a geographic presence, I think we wouldn't have the Naval Academy strength that we do in communities, and therefore the strength we do in Annapolis. But shared interest groups have come about virtually as a result of Plan 2020 efforts to engage more alumni beyond just the geography of our chapters and the ages of our classes. And that's been very successful in engaging more alumni and ultimately bringing more people back to chapters as a result of it. So all of that's been part of Plan 2020. We've been working on it day in and day out, year in and year out since 2012. It hasn't changed because of any headlines, nor does it change today because of any headlines. Next slide. So here's some demographics we should all be aware of. 58,000 living graduates, 10% are women, about 13% are minorities, 53,000 alumni members, 11.5% are women, about 13% are minorities. You know, I asked the chapters and everyone to look at their demographics, particularly the chapters. If this is our national demographic of our alumni, what does your chapter demographic look like in comparison to this? If it's better than this, that's great. If it's not better than this, then I think the question is, what can we do to help you become more diverse based on just the profile of our membership? It's important to be young and diverse. Remember, all the young graduates from 2000 on are more diverse than ever before in the prior decades of the Academy, and they're getting more diverse as we move forward into the third decade. So one benchmark we evaluate in terms of the health of chapters. The other is the average age of our alumni is 52 years old. I'm well beyond that, unfortunately. I'm past CPA and opening. So the average age of our alumni is class of 90, not class of 87. So anybody's class of 87, welcome to my side of the world. If you're class of 90 or younger, you're a young alumni. Why is that important? Got to engage as many alumni to the left of younger than 52 as we do to the right of 52, older than 52. You got to be relevant to both sides of that curve in order to grow as an association. So when I say I'm happy to see the 21st century graduates lead our chapters, I really mean that, because that should be the handoff we're engaged in around the country in order to stay healthy as we go forward in this third decade of the 21st century. So it's something to pay attention to as we talk about things we can do better going forward. Next slide. I share this information on the shared interest groups because I'm really happy to see their willingness to thrive and grow. 1,600 members of the Naval Academy of Women. Barbette, thanks for the effort. Known you for quite a while. You've been at this quietly for a long time. Now it's not quiet anymore. 1,600 members strong all around the country. I think you've helped strengthen chapters and the dialogue at the Naval Academy with mentorship and, frankly, mentorship of women and officers in the fleet, Navy and Marine Corps. All that's been very valuable. Very proud of this as part of our Plan 2020 growth of our association. Naval Academy Minority Association, 185 members, very actively involved in mentorship, giving back to the Academy philanthropically, welcome people of all races. You don't have to just be a minority to be part of NAMA. They embrace every ethnic group at the Naval Academy and in our alumni membership, and they continue to reach out actively in community. They're also being asked by the Navy to help the Navy with the dialogue that's challenging the Navy. So many NAMA members are actually talking to very senior Navy leadership about the issues presented in the Navy. So proud of NAMA. They're very much loyal to the long blue line. Not a headline, not a reaction to today's headlines. Been part of an ongoing evolution of being more engaged at our Alumni Association every year and every month, regardless of the headlines. And then Run to Honor, couldn't be more proud of them. I worked with them when I first started. You know, we never really invited people who lost loved ones from ops loss or killed in action in the Navy and Marine Corps back to the Academy. There was no systemic way to do it. They never heard from the Academy. Some lost their loved ones and never knew the Academy. Since we've been doing this with Run to Honor, we have invited decades of families back every year to the Academy to be featured at a fall football game during Veterans Weekend. We've had people from World War I and World War II families show up who've never come back to Annapolis before, who wanted to see where granddad graduated from that they never got a chance to know because he was shot down somewhere over a war zone or was lost in an ops loss. Great program, shared interest groups. All of these have been more actively supportive of our Alumni Association. And the truth is, without them, we wouldn't be who we are today. So Plan 2020 has worked very well in this regard. Next slide. A question.
Linda P.
Yeah, hey Byron, I'm really excited about the SIGs and the success of all of the SIGs. In light of that, you've had a SIG for a long time called the RV chapter. It's a much more a SIG than a chapter, and I think it would be a really good addition to the SIG program to actually put it where it belongs. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, actually, Linda, I think you shot me an email about this over a year ago. We actually talked to the alumni board about it and had them study it, and we concluded that the RV chapter, as currently configured, is still a great asset to the association, and we didn't conclude that they needed to be a shared interest group. So while there's a lot of features of it that you pointed out in an email to me probably over a year ago that look like a shared interest group, we concluded that their history and their involvement with us as a chapter has been great so far, and it's been working really well, and there was no reason to change it. So I don't know if we responded to you that way, but that's kind of our answer on that. Next slide. I do want to thank NAMA for their engagement. I point them out, not that they're the only shared interest group, leadership group, I should point out, but I really point them out to all alumni when I'm giving these town halls, because there's a huge difference between shooting me an email in a reactive moment and saying that's your leadership effort, thanks for your instant national security, and actually leaning in and solving issues presented to our association. So all of you on the call and everybody on this list are actively engaged in solving the issues in communities that keep our academy strong, that keep us moving forward, to keep us relevant to the country. That I can't thank you enough for, because to do that requires a lot of work, and it's way more than hitting an email on a keyboard at 3 in the morning, which I get a lot of. So when I see follow-up over the months, that's what I appreciate. That's what we appreciate as a staff. Many of you represent that. Many people on this list from NAMA represent that. Thanks for giving us active leadership on the things that we're dealing with. Next slide. Alumni Mentoring Program, another evolution of Plan 2020. The young alumni are benefiting from this. Lincoln the Chain has been part of this. I don't know if any of you are part of this, but you can mentor young alumni who are graduating into the fleet. And the more mentorship, the better. Class of 69 sponsors this program. It's been a great alumni program to benefit alumni. Keeps growing year after year. The class of 20, we took a hit on in terms of them signing up for this because they took a hit from COVID-19 and we couldn't quite engage with them on graduation the way we wanted to. We're going to keep working with the class of 20. Maury, I heard you say you're about to mentor some young alumni coming out to Tokyo Bay. And whatever we can do to help you as chapters mentor these young alumni as they come forward. We missed them coming through Annapolis. When they hit your chapters, please reach out to us to let us know what energy we can provide you to mentor the young class of 20. It's really important that these chapter mentorship programs catch them in the fleet to give them a sense of what our association is all about. So Maury, you mentioned they're coming your way. Let us know if we can help you out there in Tokyo Bay. All right, thanks. Next slide. This is our Alumni Association leadership. Very proud to work with them. I guess they showed George O'Gara and I because we're the two minorities on the alumni board right now. I told my staff I shouldn't count, that I'm an automatic every year. I get reelected when I'm doing a good job every year. So that's not real progress. I've been around for 10 years. Real progress is more minorities in addition to me, not me plus one. So we have work to do in that regard because we've gone up and down on our board with respect to minority representation. With respect to women, it's the same thing. One woman on the board at this point compared to 3 and 5 before. Again, I say this to all the chapters. There's 12 of you, 3 others and 9 large ones. When you pick who your chapter rep is going to be from your particular chapter board to represent our national association, think about what you're doing in terms of the representation of your organization and the representation of the demographics of our alumni association. The average age of our association is 52 years old. The average age of our board today is 57 years old. Class of 84 is the average age group of our association. The average age of our demographics is class of 90. You saw the number of women and minorities in our alumni association demographic. It's certainly more than 1 to 27 and 2 to 26. So when you, 12 chapters, have an opportunity to send 12 people to our national board, think about the demographics of your chapter and what you're saying when you send someone to be your chapter rep on our national board. Next slide. This is our foundation leadership. They're the other nonprofit that I'm running with a 45-person board, soon to be 45, currently 40. Very proud of this board. They've helped raise $490 million in philanthropy for the Naval Academy since we started this campaign in 2012. Diverse group of women and men, all of whom are leaning in with philanthropy, talent, and time. And very proud of the work we're doing, and we're going to expand this board as well to be more inclusive of a broader set of alumni who are philanthropic. It is a philanthropic board. They've raised $490 million, and we're probably going to go over $500 million this coming year as we try to close out our campaign. Next slide. And Jan Ty just joined our board from the class of, she was 84, 85? Class of 85. Anyway, she just joined our board this past year, and very happy to work with her and Cindy Tebow and Jenny Messner, who's a parent on our foundation board. Next slide. This is the non-trustee component of our national board. Why do I raise this? It's because with intention, since 2012, we've been bringing women and younger alumni to this component of our national board in order to make sure we have a more representative dialogue nationally. These are all people who are willing to lean in on our board and serve as non-trustees and have either been on our board before and continue to serve as non-trustees or have been chapter presidents before and are leaning forward to be non-trustees. You'll see Liam Lane here from the class of 02, Sharon. He's still part of our structure, even though he was a former chapter rep from San Francisco. He's still leaning in. I still see Liam come back. And the reason they're all here, A.B. Cruz, class of 80, Lonzo Barber, 97, is we want people who've been leaning in to stay involved with the national dialogue that we have, and also to be a more representative body than we're necessarily getting on our voting trustee board from chapters around the country. So in many ways, with intention, since 2012, this is how we've diversified our national conversation at the national level. Next slide. And these are some of the members of the special committee who also happen to be non-trustees on our board. Matisse Wright Springer, non-trustee on our national board. Alonzo Barber, non-trustee on our national board. Julius Caesar, non-trustee on our national board. A.B. Cruz, non-trustee on our national board. Barbette Lowndes, former trustee San Diego chapter on our board, now a non-trustee on our national board and head of the Women's Shared Interest Group. Carlos Del Toro is a member of the NAMA, Naval Academy Minority Association, and also the president of the White House Fellows Association, and just brought all of the White House Fellows back to the Naval Academy as in his role as president for a fall football game last fall, leaning in as part of NAMA. And then Janie Mines on our NAMA committees, Women's Shared Interest Group committees, and a active alumni across the generations, as well as George Rogaro, who is a trustee on our board, Dave Beidler, three-star general, who's the vice chair of our board, and Karen Benazzi, you saw before, who's co-chair of this committee and the chair of our governance committee. So very active people, part of the special committee, looking at our programs and policies to make recommendations as we move forward on the issues of today and as we look at Plan 2030 going forward. Next slide. So I share this with all the chapters, and this is the last of the town halls, at least for now. And I ask you these questions. How many decades does your chapter membership represent? How many decades does your chapter leadership represent? Do you have a chapter young alumni membership program effort? How inclusive is your chapter membership with respect to women and minorities? How inclusive is your chapter leadership with respect to women, minorities, and young alumni? How engaged is your chapter with parents clubs and admission support for the Academy? And how informed is your chapter with respect to alumni board actions, alumni board elections, and Naval Academy activity? These are all metrics we look at from our angle in Annapolis. We'll look at each of you. I'd ask you each to take this under your own wing and figure out whether any of it's helpful to your own assessment and how we can help you going forward to keep growing your chapter and keep growing your engagement. Next slide. I point out the Washington, D.C. chapter, Dale Lumi, class of 80, just with intention, engaged in a nominations effort to make his chapter younger. They had a younger pool of alumni in their nominations pool. And again, this is my age. Class of 01 is not really young, but they're young in our world. So the new president of the D.C. chapter is Louis Martini's class of 01. Generally, this chapter leadership is now much younger than they were before, with intention. That's a good thing. That's actually what we need in our association across the country. The oldest people that I've seen on this list are my age. Jeff Fowler, former Soup, class of 78, and Ramo Bias, class of 76. They're on the advisory board. Jeff shot me a note the other day to assure me that he wasn't trying to interfere with the young alumni trying to run this chapter. He was just there to support. Well, that's right. That's where we should be. We should be supporting the younger alumni who endeavor to keep our association healthy and run these chapters going forward. So really proud of the DC chapter for the work they've done with intention. Next slide. This is the other chapter selection criteria. Some of you are from the other chapter portion of our national board, and very proud of this effort. 3 of the 12 chapters are from other chapters. I won't dwell on this because I think the soup is online, but these are all important components of how we evaluate whether other chapters in the country should be on our national board. Next slide. And then we're happy to help you engage in focus group efforts or surveys in your local area to help grow your chapter on these issues of younger alumni engaging or multicultural alumni being more inclusive in your chapter efforts. Let Joe Fagan or Craig know what we can do to help and help you engage in any surveys you may want to undertake with alumni who arrive on your shores to be more inclusive. Next slide. That's it from the alumni world. COVID-19 real quickly. We're going to be very cautious about it. Heard some of you talking about it. We think there's another year of challenge with COVID-19. My CFO, who's just come on board, is going to send out an announcement tomorrow that we'll likely keep our offices closed and be working virtually through October. We're doing it 90 days at a time. We're going to follow the soup's lead on football. If he has a football season, we'll open up for football weekends very carefully to make sure we don't add to the contact tracing problem or the spiking of COVID-19 as a result of doing that, both within our staff and with the public. We'll have an Alumni All-Academy Challenge here in August that we held back from March. And ultimately, all of our fall physical events in the yard have been postponed to next spring or next fall, whether it be DGA or unions or our campaign close. So COVID-19 is a challenge. We're going to be conservative about it. There is no upside in being a hero or being laissez-faire about it. From what I can see, those that do that are suffering spikes around the country. And so we're going to be very cautious about it going forward, and we'll keep you posted. That means more virtual meetings this fall, from what I can see, unless we can see in a way to do things physically safely. We did do I-Day safely with the soup. We welcomed 1,500 parents and family and friends to Annapolis with the soup over 4 days, 3 days of I-Day this summer in a unique format. And we were able to do that physically and socially distanced. We'll do more of that this fall at this football, but a lot of events are postponed till next year. With that, that's my remarks. I know the soup is online. It's about 45 minutes in. So happy to take any other questions after the soup's remarks are done. Soup, over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody from Annapolis and Larson Hall in the yard. Thanks, Byron, and thanks, Craig and Kristen and everybody else at the Alumni Association for letting me be a part of this update out to our regions and our chapters. So I think Commander Steve Hall, you're the trustee for the Western region. Thank you for your leadership as you're dialed in, and then all the presidents of the respective chapters. I could not run our Naval Academy without your continued support, and I'm very grateful for that. So thank you for continuing that day in and day out through certain times and through uncertain times, which we're in right now with COVID-19. My intent, I've got a few slides here. My intent is to try to give you a quick look back on how we finished up this last year, what we're doing this summer, and a look ahead for my intent to open up and run the Academy this fall. So with that, Craig, if you wouldn't mind pushing the next slide, please. As Byron alluded to you, COVID-19 caused us to transition on March 11th spontaneously from what we were for 174 years as an in-person university or service academy to teaching 4,600 midshipmen online through distance learning, something that we've never done in our history. And I could not have been more impressed, more proud, and more grateful for a Herculean effort by our faculty, by our IT department, and even with the midshipmen and their agility and willingness to pick up distance learning and finish strong all the way to the end. Air Force Academy terminated their semester 6 weeks early. Your Naval Academy and those midshipmen finished every single class they had all the way through online final exams. The curveball that we were thrown, one of many curveballs, was as COVID progressed and we saw the incident happen on USS Theodore Roosevelt, the fleet said, hey, we can't take any more human bodies on our ships and in our units for summer training, either from the Naval Academy or from ROTC programs. So everything was canceled except for Leatherneck. And as we speak right now on this virtual meeting, we've got midshipmen down in Quantico going through Leatherneck, which is a requirement for anybody that wants to commission as a United States Marine. We ended up putting about 5,500 young men and women through Leatherneck. We also put about another 40 through the EOD training down in Panama City. So what do you do with 4,600 midshipmen that have some free time on their hands in the summer, when normally you keep them occupied doing some really important professional development and training? We created summer school for everybody, and the academic department put on an 8-week summer term, a summer semester, in which about 3,400 midshipmen took summer school, either one class or 2 classes online. We've concluded that. I'm proud to tell you that it was successful. We were doing that to really hedge our bets. 1, to occupy their time, but 2, to hedge our bets We weren't sure whether we were going to come back for in-person education and development this fall or not. And what I had heard from both the midshipmen, the student, as well as the professors, those that deliver the education, online training's hard. And it takes a lot more effort to learn a class and present a class online than it does in person. So we got pretty worried about midshipmen who normally carry 5 or 6 classes, 17 to 22 credit hours per semester. We weren't sure that would be achievable over the fall semester. So we eased their load, and now they've taken 2 classes, they got them under their belt, and we should have a much easier and sane fall, even though the midshipmen are coming back in person. In fact, 3,600 of them are back right now on the yard out of 4,600. We still anticipate doing online and in-person, a hybrid mixture of that in the educational environment in the fall. You can see on the bottom bullet here on the slide, I also had to cancel summer seminar, the summer STEM camps, and the summer sports camps, because I didn't have a safe environment to bring thousands and thousands of kids from all around the country and even around the world to the academy with vectors of coronavirus from so many different places, and to be able to test them and house them and keep them safe. So we canceled. Now, due to the innovation and the agility of a bunch of young lieutenants over in the admissions department, we conducted summer seminar and summer STEM camps online virtually. In fact, I think we're just wrapping up some of the summer STEM camps right now. And I'm proud to tell you that it went really well. We outreached to thousands that had originally enrolled in the in-person camps, and they maintained their enrollment. They participated and gave us great feedback. So maybe a new model moving forward to where we can combine a little virtual with the real in-person also. I couldn't save the sports camps, and that was a big financial hit to our coaches who coach at the camps, as well as the revenue that we use for midshipman activities throughout the academic year. Slide, please. So plebe summer, a very unusual plebe summer. Byron just alluded to it. One of the ways it is unusual is we did induction day over 4 days. We brought in about 1,200 young men and women that are being detailed by 300 first and second class midshipmen, and we brought them in cohorts of 300 over 4 days, because that's all my capacity and capability could handle as far as testing for COVID-19, making sure they got through the induction processes of uniform issue, inoculations, medical checks, haircuts, and then bedded down properly into Bancroft Hall, where they were going to begin a 14-day quarantine. It worked really well. Of those 1,500 young folks that came in, 19 tested positive for COVID. We isolated them right away. We quarantined the rest, and over the 14-day period, those 19 got well, and everybody else was tested out after 14 days, and it was pretty impressive. Absolutely 0 positive results on COVID. So we started with an oath ceremony, 2 oath ceremonies. We split that cohort into 2 groups of 600. They took their oaths in T-court together, just like you would normally expect. You see the picture in the lower right of this slide. They were masked until they were asked to stand up, and they took their masks off to recite their oath and say, "I do." Today we're in day 13 of a four-week plus plebe summer, and I can tell you that the plebe summer agenda has most of everything that all of us went through. What we were eliminating from the agenda was some of the fluff, some of the things that would cause large gatherings to watch the Marine Corps silent drill team or guest lectures. But all of the key things to matriculate a young man or woman from street to fleet, from street to the Naval Academy, is still being done. and going well so far. You can see on the right-hand side of the slide some of the protocols that we put in place to try to ensure this safe bubble, slow the spread of the virus amongst the plebes if it hit, and be able to contain it and not have to shut down plebe summer in its entirety. Slide, please. So what are we doing in the fall? We are reforming the brigade as I speak. The reform is going to take a month to bring back everybody and test them, quarantine them, and test them again, and set that initial safe bubble in Bancroft Hall and in the classroom environment. Will take anywhere between this week, the firsties began to come back, all the way through the end of August. We're going to start class on the 19th of August. We're going to start virtually for everybody. And then once we have the brigade reformed in its entirety, we're going to transition to a hybrid model where we have some in-person teaching in classrooms and some distance and online learning, depending on what the classes are, how big they are, and what learning outcomes we need to achieve from a particular class and a laboratory experience. Patriot League, which is the league that we play most of our sports in, has canceled all fall sports, not winter or spring yet, but just fall. And the American Athletic Conference, in which we play football in, has not yet announced their intentions. We hope to know all of that by the middle of next week. One, whether we're playing college football across the country, and two, specifically, whether our conference has established a schedule of play for us. We're anticipating and would like to see at least an 8+2 schedule for football, 8 AAC conference games, plus 2 non-conference. And those non-conference are 2 of the obvious ones. We want to compete against Notre Dame. We want to compete against Army. And we would also love to compete against our sister service, Air Force, so that we can keep the tradition of the Commander-in-Chief Trophy going. And then I'm sorry I put that bottom bullet on this slide, but I closed down the yard on the 11th of March, and I don't intend to open it, at least all the way through Christmas, to anybody that does not have a necessity to visit the Naval Academy. If you got a DBIDS card, you got an ID card, you can get on, but I'm not encouraging you to come back. I'm trying to minimize the traffic on the yard and minimize the vectors of COVID toward the Brigade of Midshipmen so that we can set ourselves up for as much success as possible for the entire semester. Slide, please. And I finish off with this slide. I couldn't be more proud and excited to tell you that Hopper Hall, the new Cyber Operations Center, which houses the Cyber Operations Major and 5 other technical majors, is open for business and will begin to teach midshipmen on the 19th of August. What a Herculean effort to take that from vision to reality in such a short period of time, about 5 or 6 years. And when you come back to visit the yard, we can't wait to showcase Hopper Hall to all of you all. And on the left here, that scaffolding that's up to resurface the Chapel Dome, that's been a little bit delayed. It was supposed to finish the end of June. It will now be finished about the middle of November. COVID-19 hit the contractors and the manufacturers of the copper real hard and has caused about a 5-month delay. But when she finishes up, she's going to be beautiful and a whole new landscape on the horizon of Annapolis, with the Chapel Dome looking real bright and then eventually looking dark brown for about 25 years until that patina, that green patina surface happens through all of the oxidation process. That's all I've got for you. I think we can take 5 or 10 minutes of questions if that's allowable, Byron. And Craig, if you'll moderate, please.
Absolutely, sir. So now I will shift to opening up. If you want to raise your hands if you've got a question, and I'll attempt to read a few off here that have come in through the chat forum. One of them was, here's a quick one for you, sir. Sea level rise. What has the Naval Academy been doing to study sea level rise as of late?
So under my predecessor, Vice Admiral Carter, he stood up the Sea Level Rise Advisory Committee, of which I have adopted and continued. And it's complemented by lots of different stakeholders, scientists, engineers, oceanographers from the Naval Academy. It has membership from the Army Corps of Engineers. It has membership from key stakeholders out in the city of Annapolis, and they meet every month. And they are looking at what the impact will be and what we need to do to move forward to mitigate the sea level rise over the next 30 to 35 years, so it never has any kind of negative impact to either the Naval Academy or the historic part of Annapolis. And where we are right now is we've made great headway and gotten funding from the Navy to conduct the initial engineering study to begin to work from that and develop the engineering solutions around the yard that will be that mitigation against sea level rise, to all be completed on a timeline by about 2050. We have time. We're being very deliberate. It comes with a big bill. It will be a combination of many different engineering solutions around the yard and replacing seawalls that exist already. And I'm very confident that this advisory council, advisory panel, is doing good work and has the attention of our Navy. And I don't think that problem will ever negatively affect the yard. Over.
Copy, sir. It looks like we have one from a BGO out there, Janelle Hanf, class of 10. She's alluding to the fact that a lot of these high school juniors and seniors have lost their sports at home, some of their in-person classes, their grading, the ability to take standardized exams. It's going to have some effect on our admissions process. And the question was regard to how is the admissions process going to, how to evolve to handle that?
So the one aspect of the whole person multiple, which we all went through when our records were considered, our applications were considered for admission, is the standardized national test, the SAT or the ACT. That is still part of the whole person multiple calculation here at the Academy. We want it to remain a part of the admissions process and calculation. And we know that those testing opportunities have been canceled on many kids. So far, we have a lot of applicants for the class of 2025 right now in our grasp, and they have already taken their standardized tests. We think the impact of COVID-19 is going to be on a small and manageable subset of future applicants. What we've done so far is we have pushed the deadlines, different milestones in the admissions application process. We've pushed those to the right to try to extend the time that these young men and women can get all aspects of their application completed, including SAT or ACT. We're hopeful right now that the College Board will figure out mitigations and figure out how to open testing sites for kids around the country. And if they don't, as we move forward, we'll continue to think through this and determine how we'll go forward if we don't have a standardized test to consider in a young man or woman's record. But right now, what we've done is push deadlines to the right, thinking that they will have a chance to test before the deadline. Over.
Copy, sir. Thank you. Thank you for that question, Janelle. I'll give you another one here, sir. I read recently that you went to Congress and fought for some additional budget for food for our midshipmen in King Hall. Thank you for doing that, by the way. As a dad of a couple of mids, I really appreciate that. But I guess on the heels of that, how is that working out? And what are your plans are for feeding the 4,600 of them when you get them all back in battery here?
So it's worked out real well, Craig. When I arrived, there was an apparent disparity amongst the services of how they budgeted money for their respective academy to feed cadets or midshipmen. And our Navy, for reasons that I'm not sure of, but probably for shipbuilding, ship repair, and fuel costs, did not give us enough money to keep us on par with Army and Air Force. And I saw firsthand that the quantity and the quality of the food in King Hall was lacking. And it was a far cry from what it was when I was a midshipman, when you all were midshipmen. And it was being commented on by midshipmen, by parents, by alumni, and we needed to fix it. We petitioned the Navy agreed, and we are now almost exactly on par with the monies that Air Force and Army give to their academies, and we've already realized an improvement in quantity and quality of food in King Hall. Now, with that said, COVID-19 hit and is kicking our ass. I have to, through health standards, provide food to midshipmen this summer that is only touched by professional food preparers. So all the meals are still cooked as they normally would be, but they're given to midshipmen in styrofoam clamshell packaging. All their milks and juices, liquids, and snacks are all prepackaged foods for grab-and-go type of format, and they don't eat in King Hall. This fall, our intent is to reopen King Hall. Picture this, all of you all picture this. Only 3 or 4 midshipmen sitting at a table of 12. You have to have a table's distance between the tables that have human beings sitting there. So it's going to take 2 or 3 waves to feed midshipmen every meal. Our intent is to get tents and expand the physical laydown capacity of King Hall into 2 additional tents. And hopefully get down to only 2 waves of feeding per day per meal. But that is going to increase labor costs, effort, and it also takes away a tiny little bit of time of the academic day because we spend more time during the meal hours trying to get all the folks fed. But they've got a great plan. They presented it to me. It's realistic. It's executable, it's affordable, and it's going to work, and it'll keep everybody safe. Over.
Wow. My classmate Derek Turner, great class of '89, must have his hands full there, being the SUPO. Shireen Griffith, class of '02 from San Francisco.
You're on mute, Shireen.
Still muted, Shireen.
Okay, so sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking our question. So this is a question from one of our alumni that's in the San Francisco Bay chapter. John Paul from class of 10 is asking, some schools such as Dartmouth and Stanford have been eliminating NCAA sports. Is there any intention to eliminate any of the sports at the academy? And if so, do we know what they are? And also, will the alumni have any input? Thank you.
There is no intention to eliminate a single sport. So it's kind of a neat statistic that we're really proud of. There's only 3 schools in the country that have greater than 30 Division I varsity sports: Stanford, Ohio State, and Navy. And Navy, here we have 33 varsity Division I sports, and there's no intent to shut down any of them and cancel them at this point. If we get to that extremist point, we are going to begin to reach out and figure out ways to prevent that and fund them, knowing that this is probably a blip. COVID-19's impact, in my estimation and my hope and my prayers, will be a 1-year phenomena. And then we'll be back on step next fall. So I think it would be a knee-jerk reaction, and the rest of us think it would be a knee-jerk reaction to have to cancel anything. Now, it's a financial burden for sure, but we're figuring out creative ways to overcome that financial burden so that we can maintain, our primacy in sports, because sports is such an important part of developing midshipmen. The varsity sports, the club sports, and the intramural sports All of that is really, really important to us. Over.
Well, sir, I think you may have just gone to 2 because I believe Stanford just may have cut a couple of programs. Let's see, Mike Carmichael out of our Oregon Southwest Washington chapter. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, question from one of our members is with the battle training that's been missed for the summer cruises, particularly the youngster cruise where people explore being an enlisted, what are y'all doing or what do you plan to do to make up for that lost training?
So it's really interesting, Mike, when we had to begin to explore this, because that's a great concern, I asked the question, what is the minimum training that all of us midshipmen have to commission legally in the naval services? And the answer is every one of us has to have 1 gray-hulled cruise. All the rest of the training that we do is above and beyond, but we also, I imagine we would all violently agree that all the training that we do here every summer at the Naval Academy makes us as professional as we are when we hit the fleet, and we don't want to cut any of that. But knowing what my minimum boundary is and knowing what the normal training is through 3 different summers, we're going to work and figure out, and working with the fleet, how we can recover, first of all, at least that 1 gray-hulled cruise, and then 2, all of those other opportunities that ProTrimid offers, all of our experiential leadership and learning opportunities, what they provide. And that's a big project that we have to figure out how to sequence that, schedule that, and not overwhelm the fleet. And so it's not only Naval Academy midshipmen, it's ROTC midshipmen. So that we'll have to think through the prioritization of how we get every young man and woman the minimum training they need, and then build on the minimum and try to get as much else as we can fit back in. But these kids will not graduate and commission from the academy without that professional summer training experience to some degree, sir.
Thank you, sir. Well, I'm looking at 16:14 East Coast time. Steve Hall, I saw your hand was temporarily raised there. Did you have a question before we start to circle this up?
Just agreeing about Stanford dropping 11 varsity sports, put us in the number 2 spot now, which was
we're number 2.
Right.
All right.
If there are no further questions, I do want to say, Admiral, I'm really sorry we didn't have a chance to meet you in person out here on your West Coast tour that got canceled, but being able to step in and do these virtual town halls with us is a great opportunity. There's a lot of alumni. It's very difficult when you live in chapters like Puget Sound where you have to catch a ferry, or LA where you have to drive over a county border to be able to meet up with the chapter. And this has been an awesome opportunity for a lot of us in the Western region to get to see you in person, which a lot of us couldn't have done even if you had been able to make the tours. I thank you for your time, and Byron, I thank you for your time and setting this all up for us.
Steve, you're very welcome. All of you are very welcome. I'm grateful for the technological ability to be able to do this. I agree with you violently. And before we dial off, I just want to give a shout out to my Plebe Summer Squad leader, Barbette Henry Lowndes, who's dialed in. I see her smiling and shaking her head. I think she's still in disbelief that Sean Buck, her little plebe, is the superintendent of the Naval Academy. Hi, Barbette. Back over to you, Craig, and to Byron. Thanks again for letting me be a part of this.
Great. All right, well, thanks, everybody. Great to see you out west. Go Navy. If we have a football season this fall, we'll announce how we're going to support that, either live or virtually or both. So, Sean, thanks for all you're doing. Keep doing great things as we challenge ourselves to meet the COVID challenge. Have a good day, everybody. Go Navy.
Navy.